I know that there's a problem, not just in the country, but in the world. There's just some people that don't believe in therapy.
Like, really? People don't believe in therapy?
Before we get started with our episode, we're going to hear from our sponsors. With HelloFresh, get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking fun, easy, and affordable. But with HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table both quick and painlessly. And there's always new flavors to adventure with, as there's 50 flavors to choose from every single week. So for free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/FreeRebecca. One free breakfast item per box while your subscription lasts. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/FreeRebecca. All of my ADHDers, you know that a daily occurrence is the where's my phone? Where's my keys? Where's my purse? I don't know where I put them. Which is why I'm so thankful for Life 360's new tile trackers. I can track anything from anywhere. Like, I can literally track my car in the parking space I left it because you know I'm gonna forget. And my favorite thing about tile trackers is how easy they are to use. Keep track of what's important in life with Tile. Visit tile.com and use code Rebecca for 15% off on all tiles. That's tile.com/Rebecca. Now let's get started with this week's episode. Are we ready? Are we good? Oh, we're going now. Oh. Do you have a specific way that you like to be introduced or announced or anything like that?
However you like.
Dr. Rachel? I don't
Sure.
know. Hi, Dr. Rachel.
Hello.
Thank you so much for
It's
joining
like
me.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
Go by Rebecca.
I respond to hey
you. I was just
sure
going to say, right. Hey you.
person, like it's whatever works.
Yeah.
People talk,
you
I
over there.
usually look and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, whether it's to me or not, it just
Same.
the ADHD, I hear the noise and I just look from where it's coming from. But
Yeah.
hi, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited about this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, if you're good enough for Oprah, of course, you're way too good for me.
Oh, yeah.
But so you are like a real professional therapist.
I thought you were going to say you're a real person.
You
Yes,
are
I am
also
a real
person. Yes, you are real.
I am a real person.
So what kind of, okay, I have so many questions. I want to know like what you specialize in, but also like how did you get into that and what does it look like to become a therapist? Because there's a lot of different kinds of therapy, a lot of different kinds of therapists. What was the path like for you in your field?
Great questions. Lots of questions, lots of information.
I talk too much. Just tell me to
No,
shut up.
it's good. So I'm a licensed psychologist. Which
Okay.
is a little bit different than a quote, just a therapist.
Okay.
And I don't want to really say just.
No.
minimize it,
Yeah.
but to kind of understand that. So all psychologists are therapists, but all therapists are not psychologists.
Okay. What is the difference?
So a psychologist has a PhD or a PsyD,
Got it.
which is a doctorate level
Okay.
degree. A therapist can have a master's degree and be, several different things. Could be a social worker, can be a, licensed counselor, can be all different types of therapists.
Interesting. I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a
And then there's also a
psychologist.
psychiatrist, which a lot of people get confused by.
What's the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Exactly. So a psychiatrist has a medical degree
Got
and goes to
it.
medical school.
Okay.
A psychologist goes to graduate school to get the doctoral level training.
Interesting.
Most of the time, psychiatrists also, they do. They can provide prescribed medication.
Okay.
A psychologist typically cannot, but there are newer laws and certifications now that you can, if you want to go on for that additional training and certification.
Interesting.
But generally speaking, psychiatrists, medical school prescribe medication. Some do therapy as well. Psychologist does not prescribe medication, does therapy.
Interesting. So, random question before you continue. In New York, are you able to prescribe? I'm just being nosy at this point.
So personally, I cannot.
Okay.
I did not get that additional certification.
But people
I
can.
think in New York you can. When I was in graduate school, it started to become a thing.
Cool.
I don't recall which states can and can't, but I cannot. I do know that.
And do you have interest in doing that in the future? Is that something that you're like, absolutely not?
I do not.
Okay. Is there a particular reason? I'm just being nosy at this point. This is fascinating.
It's a great question. A lot of my clients ask me this.
Okay.
Especially whenever I do recommend that people seek, a provider to maybe prescribe medication.
Right.
I say to them that I chose not to go to medical school for a reason, as much as I love medicine and my specialty is in behavioral medicine. So kind of the interplay of the physical and mental health. But I chose not to because I believe that there are things that are in our control, like our behaviors and working on our thoughts, that can be helpful. But with that being said, there was a time and a place for medication, and medication is a wonderful tool to have in our toolbox along with therapy.
Interesting. That's fascinating. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by it. So then what did your journey into this field look like for you?
It's a very long journey.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm here for all of it.
Yes, but but a good one. And I
Okay.
often tell people, because I get asked a lot from people going into college or graduate school, should I do this? Should I get a doctorate level? Is it worth it? And I have to tell people, if you know you want to do this, it is 100% worth it.
Mhm.
If you're questioning if it's for you or you really don't think so, maybe take some time off to think about it because it is a really long journey.
Yeah.
So I went to the typical 4-year, college, undergrad.
Mhm.
And then I went on to graduate school. Before I went into graduate school, I took some time off to get some research experience. So I worked actually at the NYU Child Study Center, affiliated with NYU Langone School of Medicine. Got some research experience working with children and all different behavioral disorders and mental health illnesses. And then applied to graduate school, which was about 4 years of coursework. And then through the 4 years, you're also doing some clinical externships in the kind of in the process. So like a day here, a day there, doing different training sites and learning different things. From there, you have to work on a dissertation as well as do a clinical internship. So the clinical internship is like medical school residency. It's like 1 year you are working like a typical job, but you're underpaid
Yeah.
as a psychologist in training.
Yeah.
Then you have to finish your dissertation, defend your dissertation, and then do a postdoctoral year.
Oh.
So after my clinical internship, which actually I did in Charleston, South Carolina at the Medical University of South Carolina, I stayed on for a postdoctoral fellowship where I did research and more clinical training. Then you have to sit in front of the licensing board and do a licensing exam to become a licensed psychologist.
Wow.
So it's a long journey.
Yeah.
But looking back, for me personally, I would not have done it any other way. Like,
I love
yeah,
that.
it was fabulous. I'm glad I did it. I love the work that I do.
That's
just love it.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So then do you kind of figure out what you want to specialize in during the schooling journey or afterwards?
You could do really either.
Okay.
To be honest, I never knew I wanted to be a psychologist. I figured that
Really?
out along the way. Yeah. So my mom majored in psychology, but is not a psychologist. But because she majored in psychology, I said, I do not want to major in psychology.
Right.
The stubborn daughter that I am.
Yep.
Want to be nothing like my mom because I am very similar to my mom.
My mom's sitting right
Exactly.
there.
I'm like, hi, Mom.
Smiling, nodding along the way.
Exactly.
Thanks, Mom.
So I didn't major in psychology, and I used to dance growing up
Mhm.
and decided that I wanted to go into something with dance, although I knew dance was not going to be my career.
Okay.
So I went to a small liberal arts college my freshman year for what was called dance science, like physical therapy for dancers,
Oh.
and actually was fascinated instead by being exposed to disordered eating behaviors in the dance world, which I did not witness or observe or experience growing up in a small town in Maryland. But when I went to college with pretty much all dancers, I really saw that and became very curious in human behavior, what was going on in the brain and all of these things with eating disorders. I was like, all right, I want to change colleges. I want to major in psychology and I want to study disordered eating.
You just made me feel so attacked right now.
Oh, no.
I didn't do dance,
Okay.
but I did competitive cheerleading.
I did competitive dance. So
for 15
get it.
years, and I'm like, oh yeah, now I PTSD, man.
I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
It's okay. No, yes. Okay, so what really stood out to you? Because I'm asking that because I know what you're gonna say because I was in that world. But like for people that have no idea, like what really stood out to you about like the issue of eating disorders within the dance world?
So because I grew up in a small town,
Mm-hmm.
I want to just emphasize the fact
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't really witness this or observe it. Like my dance teacher, like never said anything about anybody's weight, body shape, size, etc. I kind of figured I was never going to be a ballerina, like just because of my body shape and size at the time. But I also didn't love ballet, so I was fine with that. I liked tap and jazz and lyrical and modern and all these other things. But then I went off to college and literally, I mean, all of us walked around in like our leotard and tights and like little and shorts over that all day because we had multiple dance classes. And there was so much emphasis on body shape, size, weight that I went for an intensive like dance program right before the first week of school. And I remember calling my parents and being like, lunch was lettuce and diet Sprite. And I will never forget that. Like literally I was like, where's the food? And they're like, this is it. And like presented a bowl of lettuce and like diet soda. So that just kind of paints an image, I think.
Yeah. So when I started cheerleading very young, and I was always like, for those that don't see me, like I'm 5 feet tall. I've always been an itty bitty person. And so because I've always been like so small, obviously I was always someone that they would like throw into the air. And I never really realized until college that so many comments that were made to me like growing up really kind of ingrained in my brain about like, jokes when you go off for Thanksgiving break and they're like, oh, well, don't eat too much. You don't want to be too heavy when you come back for people to throw you. Or, oh, what did you eat for dinner tonight? Like those kinds of things. And so like I remember like being in high school, just like not even eating lunch, like not even being hungry, because just thinking about those kinds of comments would just eat at me to the point that I would lose my appetite completely. Like completely. I remember being, and like granted in high school you go through like friend drama, boyfriend drama, blah, blah, blah. But I remember in high school, like it's not like I got much taller. I was done growing. I was like 90 pounds, which was so unhealthy and so great. And so like since then I've really tried to be mindful, even when, in adulthood as a woman, you settle into your adult body and your adult weight, and even thinking like a year ago, like, oh, I think I want to like get back into working out, get a little bit more into shape, like still being mindful about, okay, well, if I go below this many pounds, then I need to start like really checking in on myself. And I don't want to go below this, and I want to be conscious of that. And as long as I'm conscious about how much I'm losing, I don't need to be concerned, kind of thing. And it's
I love that you said
crazy.
that.
Yeah.
Like about being mindful of it and checking in with yourself, because that's what I often tell people.
Yes. It's because like even thinking about like growing up in cheerleading, like we were 12-year-olds walking around in crop tops,
Right,
in skirts. And like now, since they've changed the rules, like after I aged out, they're like, oh, hey, we probably shouldn't have 8-year-olds wearing crop tops on a stage. That feels like it's not a great idea. And I'm like, well, who thought it was a great idea in the first place?
But that brings up, actually a lot of the work that I do.
Yeah.
And how much life has really evolved and what we know today that we didn't know then.
Yes.
And like there's so much, and everything you just talked about is really the work that I do, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
And how our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are linked. So like when you said like those thoughts were eating at you to the point that it made you lose your appetite, that's the relationship between how we think impacts how we feel, which impacts our actions and our behaviors.
Okay, so what would you say are some of the largest misconceptions that people have about like that, whether it relates to eating or stress management or self-care or anything like that? Like what are some things that people either don't realize or should be mindful of, or anything new that we've learned about people and our brains?
So I have so much I could say about that.
Oh, I want to hear all of it.
But the one thing I was going to say is actually something I was going to post on social media soon.
Okay.
That I often say anyway is
Okay.
a clip from a special thing that I did
Okay.
in the past, where I said that people need to be mindful of their self-talk.
Okay.
Because our thoughts and our self-talk becomes our reality because of that connection between our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So we get messages from the world every day, right? It could be from, like you said, the messages that are like, be careful what you eat when you go home for Thanksgiving, messages in media, messages on social media, messages from friends, family, from ourselves. We internalize all these messages though, and our brain can't really interpret them as helpful or in a productive way as it should, so to say. Just imagine, I like to explain it this way. Imagine getting thrown all these messages all day long. Then your brain kind of just interprets it and spits it back out at you, and that's your automatic thought. So we all have automatic thoughts. In psychology, we call them cognitive distortions. Great examples would be like all or nothing thinking. Like, if I don't have an hour, I'm not going to go to the gym at all, right? Great example. Another one is the should have, would have, could have thoughts, or the what if thoughts, like I should have done this, or I should go to the gym, I should eat healthy. These are not really helpful thoughts. They don't make us feel good. It actually puts extra pressure on ourselves.
Right.
But those thoughts then become our reality because of that relationship. So we need to be mindful of the way we're talking to ourselves because we're getting all these messages and our brain is going to spit something out, but then we have to be mindful of it because it really impacts our whole day, right?
Yeah.
Imagine waking up in the morning and the first thought you have is, I'm a failure. Like, how's that going to impact the rest of your day,
Yeah.
right? You might think yucky, like just think like I'm, like in a bad way.
Yeah.
You might then feel bad. And then you might be like, well, I'm not even going to get out of bed today. And now you stay in bed all day. But instead you wake up and you're like, not super positive. I always say, we don't want to be super positive if it's unrealistic.
Right.
To set yourself up for disappointment or failure. But you could be like, you know what? I'm going to try my best. There's a different feel to it. Maybe you're going to get up, you're going to get dressed, you're going to see how you feel. So just overall, for people to be extra mindful of the way that they're talking to themselves is really important because the messages we're getting, we can't necessarily control, but we can control to a degree the thoughts that we are repeating on repeat to ourselves.
I love that. And it also makes me think of, I have a lot of friends who are starting to have babies and their babies are growing up and they're toddlers and they're starting to, listen to everything that is said to them. And I love watching my friends are some of the best moms, man. I'm in awe watching them be so mindful about instead of I'm trying to think of one example, my friend Faith, telling her daughter, not just you're beautiful and not just you're pretty, but oh, you're so kind. You're so smart. Setting her daughter up to really value those aspects about herself.
Yeah.
And I love that. And as soon as I see some of my friends do it, I'm like, I want to do this for all my friends. And so I always anytime I give my little nieces or nephews, that's of course, because that's what they are to me,
Right.
a compliment, it's always, oh, you're working so hard on your blocks, or that's so smart, or you put in so much effort, or you're being so nice to your mommy. Teaching kids from a young age, it's just fascinating to see how it builds the framework of the world in their mind. What are your thoughts on that?
It's so true. And once again, that brings us back to that idea of that we didn't know everything we know now then. We didn't know that those messages were not helpful and could even be harmful, right?
Yeah.
So I often say, and you've probably seen me say this a million times, is that we should never comment on somebody's body shape, size, weight, food choices, food behaviors, things like that.
Right.
The reason I say we shouldn't, though, is because we don't know what anyone's going through, right? So if we comment on somebody and say wow, you look great, you lost so much weight. First of all, that could mean, well, what? I didn't look good before? What was wrong with me before?
Right.
Or we could actually be negatively reinforcing a harmful behavior, right? We don't know what anyone's going through.
Right.
So we have to be extra careful of that. And also we want children to grow up knowing that there's more to them than just what they look like, than just their appearance.
Or their clothes, or something that is not as meaningful as how
you're
kind they are.
Or I like to say to my son that you're brave.
We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. With HelloFresh, get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking fun, easy, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. We all know home-cooked meals are better for you, but we don't always have the time to pull that off. But with HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table both quick and painlessly. And there's always new flavors to adventure with, as there's 50 flavors to choose from every single week. Just pick your meals and your delivery date. It's that simple. I've used HelloFresh for years and I really like it. My personal favorite is the crispy buffalo chicken. Oh, so good. In general, I'm also just really bad at decisions, so them giving me options for food instead of me just having to make a meal planning list out of thin air, just very helpful. So for free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/freeRebecca. One free breakfast item per box while your subscription lasts. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/freeRebecca. Listen, all of my ADHDers, you know that a daily occurrence is the, where's my phone? Where's my keys? Where's my purse? I don't know where I put them. Every day. I swear, I just saw it 2 seconds ago, and all of a sudden I'm in a different room. I don't even remember why I walked in there, and my phone's gone. My keys are not in my hands. Did you take them? I think the cat took them, which does not help my time blindness because I was already running late. which is why I'm so thankful for Life 360's new tile trackers. I can track anything from anywhere. Like, I can literally track my car in the parking space I left it because you know I'm gonna forget. It happens every time. Like, I know it's going to happen. And my favorite thing about tile trackers is how easy they are to use. I'm just not that great with technology, so I'm glad that these tile trackers in Life 360 are user-friendly. My favorite part is that you can use the tile trackers to find your phone when it's on silent. That's a game changer. Game changer for me. Keep track of what's important in life with Tile. Visit tile.com and use code Rebecca for 15% off on all tiles. That's tile.com/Rebecca. Now, back to the episode.
You know, like many times he's like, Mommy, I'm scared of this. I'm scared of that. And I'm like, wow, you were so brave today by doing that. Or you were so brave by trying this. But it is so important that we think outside the box a little bit and be a little more creative in the words that we use, even talking to each other, right? Even not just children, but children absorb everything. They really do. And they hear, see everything. And they want to be you. You know, they want to be their parents. They look up to you. So, you know, that's also really important. The words that we say to ourselves out loud around our children, right? Like if somebody were to look in the mirror and be like, oh, I look ugly today, or I feel fat today, right? Their children are going to internalize that as like, oh, well, if mommy feels that way, then maybe I should feel that way, right? So there's a lot with the messages that we have to be extra mindful with.
So I saw this thing on TikTok, and it's so funny because I saw so many people in the comments say like, oh, this makes me feel silly, or this is silly. But like, just like we're very mindful about the compliments that we give to kids, what do you think about purposefully like looking in the mirror and doing that for yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the self-talk that I'm talking about.
Does that really help?
It does. So it does, but
Okay.
there's a little but piece. Not, you know.
No, yeah.
As I said that, I was like, that
No,
didn't sound right.
it's okay.
See, it could be funny. So self-talk is important, but we don't want to be extra positive, right?
Okay.
So
What does that mean?
so for some people, so there is an area of research in psychology called positive psychology,
Okay.
and it does work, but sometimes it doesn't work.
So the positive psychology is like looking in the mirror and like complimenting yourself.
Well, it could be a form of positive psychology.
Okay.
Right. There's more to positive psychology, but that could be like the I'm going to call it super positive self-talk.
Okay.
Maybe it's being like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a great example. I mean, I'm brave. I'm this, I'm that. I got this. Like those are positive things in a productive way. I think if you don't feel, you know, I'm just going to use the example of I'm beautiful.
Sure.
Okay. Because I think that's a common one. It could be helpful to say in the mirror, I'm beautiful, if eventually you're going to believe it. And that's a word that resonates with you.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to say something that just feels so not you.
Yeah.
But there's something, so we can retrain our brains. And by retraining our brains, it's repetition and practice. So yes, looking in the mirror and being like, I got this, never give up, I'm beautiful, I'm brave is super helpful. But it's almost like that toxic positivity that we don't want to be too positive that it's not believable.
Okay.
So a little bit not believable is okay because we don't believe it today. We might believe it, but I don't want people to set themselves up for failure.
Right.
Either.
Okay.
So a good example of that is actually the body positivity movement, for instance. So believing that we should always love how our body looks all the time is a little bit unrealistic. Actually, it's very unrealistic, right? It is normal to not love every part of our body all the time. Like you wake up feeling one day and like maybe you don't feel so great about whatever because you're bloated.
Right.
Totally normal. But if we tell ourselves, and on social media, a lot of people with the body positivity movement are like, I love my body regardless, it doesn't matter. What that does actually for somebody that's not fully loving their body right now is like, well, if they can do it, why can't I? What's wrong with me? And then you try, but it's just not realistic. Not much in life is so all or nothing.
Right.
So I believe it's okay to feel about your body sometimes. But we can then shift the focus and look at our function, our body's function. Let's get the focus off of the appearance and more on what the body neutrality movement is, which is what our body does for us, right? You used to be a cheerleader. I used to be a dancer. Now I'm a runner. I have 2 children. Thinking about my body was capable of doing these things, is capable of doing these things, is much more helpful to us than thinking about just appearance focused.
Interesting. I've never even heard of the body neutrality movement
Yeah,
before.
I love it.
I like that a
Yeah,
lot.
it's
Okay.
really taking the focus off of the appearance and more on the function that our body does for us.
I like that a lot. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that just made me feel all warm inside.
Oh, good.
So are there any other, do you think, like misconceptions or things that we're learning or that people might not be aware of that like really can impact their lives?
Well, I mean, thinking back to the conversation we were having about disordered eating,
Sure, yeah.
I think to talk about that for a moment
Absolutely.
is that I think a lot of people, unfortunately, I think partly because of social media, have disordered eating thoughts or behaviors.
Mhm.
It's common these
Yes.
days. I don't want to say it's normal, but it's common. And I want people to know that just because you are not a certain weight, either underweight or overweight, does not mean that you may not struggle with disordered eating. I think, we used to believe you have to be, very underweight to be able to have, say, anorexia, right? But we know that that's not true these days. There's actually something called atypical anorexia, which is somebody of a more normal, quote unquote, like I'm putting air quotes in the sky right now, because I really don't like to focus on weight. But to just be mindful of that. If people are like, oh, but I'm a guy, I'm a male, like I can't have an eating disorder. Well, you can too, so just to say that like disordered eating disorders, mental health, anything that we're talking about really doesn't discriminate, right? It doesn't matter body shape, size, gender, sex, etc. Anybody can struggle with their mental health. And I think for anyone that might listen to this, to just be aware of that and know that there's help available. If you're questioning, should I seek mental health, treatment? Should I seek professional help? I typically say if that question is popping up in your head, then it can't hurt.
Yeah.
It can't hurt to just go for a consult, find a therapist, find a professional.
And just ask a question. Like you never know. And fingers crossed, you just double checked and you were in tune with your body and just checked on yourself. Yay. Go get yourself a little treat.
Right. Or maybe now you have an extra tool in your toolbox, like a great therapist that you can connect with to go back to when you're struggling with something.
I feel like when Instagram became super popular, there was this rise of like the Instagram aesthetic, of like the picture perfect photos and the vacation and the beach pictures and the bikini pictures. And I feel like that really harmed so many women in my generation as we grew up with that. But I've really become so happy seeing Instagram shift a lot.
Yeah.
Especially over the last few years, especially since COVID, of being more like focused on authenticity.
Yes, absolutely.
Like there are some accounts that I see like, oh, this is me posing for the photo and this is me like relaxing and like this is me, but this is also me. This is what my body looks like in both of these photos, and it's like normal and that's okay and it's fine. And like I love that. And I'm even noticing that like on Instagram, like authentic videos of just people being silly or themselves, like they're doing so much better than just the picture perfect, like this was my breakfast today or this, you know what I mean? And I think that's so like, have you also noticed that trend?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love there's some accounts that I follow that's similar. That's like, posing like this in order to look like this. And then like, this is what I had to do in order to look like that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think that's really good. And also I've seen the same thing. I mean, even in my posts, like the videos that I do that I create in 2 seconds that I'm just like talking or being totally real, obviously is more relatable than, like kind of the formal posting and like, things like that. So I agree. There's been a huge shift.
Yeah.
I still think we have a way to go in terms of like how social media impacts people's mental health, but it's definitely better than the curated, beautiful images that people were showing. Some still share that also.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like it all kind of depends on like what you use social media for.
Exactly.
Because there are some people who genuinely use it just to show the highlights or the pretty pictures or the positive parts on life and I feel like there always will be, and that's fine. Like you do what makes you happy.
Exactly.
I'm just really also excited to see the people who are sharing I really wanted to do this but it didn't go well, but here's my journey anyways. Like for example, oh my gosh, so I've been redecorating my entire house, right? And my mom gave me this Pottery Barn chair that it was white, right? It had a red slip cover on it, and like she spilled water on it someday or something happened to it, and the red bled through and like stained the white. So we needed the slip cover, right? And I went on this journey of like, I'm going to learn how to DIY and I'm going to lighten this thing and it's going to be great. It's going to be so perfect. And I literally made so many like updates to this thing. And by the end of it, I used so much bleach, the entire thing just like disintegrated.
Oh my gosh.
And I was so upset. And like so many people reached out to me and like I made a story about it on Instagram. And I was like, well, that didn't go well. And everyone was like, that's so embarrassing. Why would you post that? And I'm like,
Why not?
why not? Like, it's funny. Like, it's real.
Right.
You know, it's like I tried something. I was so confident about it and it did not go well. And you know what? That's life.
Yes.
That's just life sometimes. It's not always going to go well. And like, for me, it was so empowering of being able to like laugh at myself in that aspect. And I don't know. I don't even know. Yeah, you know what I mean.
I totally love that you just shared that, because what I was going to say was it actually goes back to how we interpret the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I often say that every situation is neutral until we interpret it.
Yeah.
So that exact situation could have happened to somebody else and they would have been devastated. They would have like cried about it. I mean, maybe you did that too. But, right, a little bit, right. But you got to the point where you could laugh about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I often give the example that you could have two people on the same train or in the same traffic, and one person is like angry and like, oh my God, I'm going to be late. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. My boss is going to, fire me, all these things. And somebody else could be like, you know what? Here's some me time. I'm going to listen to the latest podcast of Rebecca, So, right. So, but it's all about how we interpret the world and how we manage these stressors, because life happens. Stressors are thrown at us every single day,
Yes.
but it's how we interpret it and how we manage it. So I love that you share that, because it's literally that mental shift that you were able to eventually laugh about it and share about it. And who cares? Like, it was a funny, like looking back now, it's a funny story.
Right, exactly. Do you have any like professional tips and tricks for people to be able to get into that mindset a little better?
So the first thing I always say is you need to pause.
Okay.
The power of the pause, right? Because immediately our mind is going to jump to that negative. It's normal. It's going to happen. Our brain wants to jump to that. So first, we just want to pause. And I always like to say, let's take a breath, right? Just take a breath, pause, and then we can think, okay, what is in my control? Right.
Yeah.
And then we might be able to, we may not, or we can take some time to retrain our brain to do this, might be able to get to that point where you got to, hopefully a little quicker in time, right? So we're not eventually we're not just going to like get rid of these negative thoughts, but we're going to minimize them.
Right.
And the quicker we can eventually get to them, the less time that we're spending in this like negative space.
Right.
Which I just want to say, it's also okay to be sad, be angry, be crying, and it's okay to not be okay.
Emotion.
Exactly. We have lots of emotions for a reason. It's okay. But we don't want to sit there too long, because then once again, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are linked.
Right. Interesting. So then, and I feel like the more you're able to manage and control that, the less physical stress is on your body. And I know that stress is something that you specialize a lot in also. What are some things that you can tell me about like stress on the body, what that can do to a person, and like how to manage that?
Yeah, so physical and emotional health are related, and there's the mind-body connection is real. So things that we think and our brain is going to impact our body, and vice versa. Like, it's all part of the same thing. So I like to think that I take a very holistic approach to health because of that.
Right.
So stress, once again, is going to happen. But if we think about states that or like times that we're very stressed, most of the time we will have physiological symptoms or signs like, fast heartbeat, sweating, mind racing, high blood pressure. All these things are going to happen when we're feeling stressed. When we're feeling relaxed, it's the complete opposite. So stress and relaxation are two completely different physical states that our body cannot be in at the same time.
Right.
The good news about that is when we're feeling stressed, there are things that we can do to help our body lower that stress level and become more in a relaxed state. Things like deep breathing exercises. I like to teach diaphragmatic breathing often, but breathing exercises, relaxation techniques, mindfulness techniques, meditation, things like that can be helpful to bring that stress level down. It is normal for us to go into what's called the fight or flight response. I'm sure you've heard about that. Completely normal. It's the stress response that our body goes into when it feels like it's in danger or there's a threat. The problem with that is the threat may not be a real threat. Once again, going back to that scenario where everything is neutral until we interpret it, there may not be a real threat, but our mind just made up a threat in our
Right.
mind. Now our body's in that physiological stress response state. Our body naturally returns to its baseline or its homeostasis within about 20 minutes or so, 20 to 60 minutes, being more relaxed. But if we stay in that high stress state, it becomes chronic stress. Chronic stress can lead to and is associated with a lot of health conditions and illnesses. So because of that, we want to be mindful of our stress. We want to try to de-stress, which is, I get it, it's hard in a society that we live in today, but we want to be mindful of that and try to do things on a regular basis to bring that stress level back down.
Okay. Interesting.
I know there's a lot of information.
No, I love it, and it's so funny because I literally, as you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, take time for yourself, and I remember that when I relax, I play video games with my friends, and that's not relaxing.
So people often ask me, what should I do
Okay.
when I'm feeling stressed,
Right.
right? So first, I always tell people that they should have their own personal coping toolbox full
Okay.
of tools that they see themselves using when they're feeling stressed. For instance, I'm a runner, but if you're not a runner, I'm not going to tell you to put running in your
Right.
coping toolbox if you're not going to do it.
Yeah, I hate running.
Playing video games, right? So don't put it in your toolbox. Playing video games could be helpful if it helps you.
Okay.
Then the question is, how do I feel when I'm playing the video games, right? Is it feeling like you're getting me timed? Are you feeling less stressed? Maybe it depends on the type of video game, right? Same as music. We're not going to put all types of music in our coping toolbox.
Right.
Some music might be more relaxing than others.
Yeah.
Playing video games might work for you sometimes. There could also be some negative effects like screen time, things like that, but might work for you for some things, which is why it could be in your toolbox, but I don't want it to be your only tool.
No.
Right. Just like running can't be my only tool.
Right.
Like if I'm stressed,
exciting.
right. If I'm stressed right now, I can't just go out on a run in the middle of a podcast talk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not possible. So you want to have a few things in your toolbox. I always recommend at least 3.
Okay.
And one of the 3 be something internal that nobody else or that you don't need anybody else for, and you don't need anything else for. So like the breathing, the meditation, the mindfulness, the relaxation techniques
Okay.
that I could do right now if I needed to and you wouldn't even know.
Got it. Interesting.
But keep video games in there if it's working for you.
Oh no, it's not. It's
Oh, it's
not
not working for you.
relaxing. It's very,
Okay.
very high stress.
But okay, but it's serving a purpose. So then
Yeah.
the question would
Yeah.
be, what purpose is it serving? I imagine it's a distraction technique. It's
yeah.
distracting
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
which is also de-stressing.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, what 3 things do you have in your toolbox, if you don't mind me asking?
Of course. So I have my diaphragmatic breathing or
Okay.
breathing exercises. I have running, and I have calling a friend or family member
Got it.
as my go-tos. Like they tend to work best for me. And if I can't run, it might be just going, like, I'll take running / like going outside for a walk, getting fresh air, being in nature. I would kind of clump that together because I don't
Like
run on the
that.
treadmill. So
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'd put my cats on there for sure. Those are like
snuggling.
Yeah.
I mean, my children also. outside. The movement for me is also like dance parties with my kids.
Oh, I
So,
love.
Yeah.
That's
We have
so
like daily dance
cute.
parties.
That's so cute.
Yes.
I just curl up with little Milo in my lap and
I
we
love
just
that.
sit there for like hours, and that's my favorite thing in the
That's
entire world.
great.
No,
So I'm going to
love
put you
that.
on the spot now. So you have
Okay.
cats. What else?
Okay.
What else? What can we
Cats,
add to your toolbox? You have 3.
I call people. I'm
Good.
definitely a caller. Like I'll call
Perfect.
someone and just talk to them forever.
It's so helpful. Good. So
it is.
Cats talking.
Cats talking. I exercise for sure. I have put a pause on my exercise lately just because we're really getting into the deep of it right now. Because I've started ADHD medication and it has that appetite suppression.
Yes.
I have been experiencing more loss, so I kind of put exercising on the back burner until I can get that a little bit more
That makes sense.
under control, because I just felt like that was responsible for me and my body.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that you're mindful of that. and
Yeah, thank you.
Insightful enough to say that. and
Yeah.
To do that. But what I'm going to say is
Okay.
if exercise was a coping tool for you, then maybe just getting outside, getting fresh air, moving your
Yeah.
body in like a walking
Yeah.
way. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be exercise, but it could be movement.
okay, we've been taking one of my best friends. We've been taking her and my little nephews out like to the
Love that.
park. Like
Perfect.
when it's not, we live in the South, it gets hot, and heat advisories and infants are not
Yeah.
good. But when we can, we take them to the
Perfect.
park, we take them to the zoo,
Good.
wherever we can. But like, what are some? So we talked about eating disorders. Anything else that you want to talk about, mention before like we move on from that? Because I have another thing that I want to ask you about, but I don't want to not cover anything important with the other topic.
Let's just jump in.
Okay, so self-care. is another aspect that you are so big on. I want to hear everything you have to say about that.
So it's actually perfect that we just talked about the stress management part, because I believe that stress management tools are actually we can use the same tools as self-care practices,
Okay.
but when we don't need them. So,
Got it.
and wink, wink, I'm writing a book, and all of this will be in
Ooh.
there.
Okay, what will it be called?
Can't say the name of the book
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Because it's
Just
not
be on the
finalized.
lookout. Be on the lookout.
Yes, but I talk a lot about all of this
Okay.
in it, and only because it's very top of mind, because I just wrote the chapter on this recently. But so if we think about stress management tools, we use them when we need them. I'm stressed in the moment. I'm in a high stress state. I need to calm down. I need to relax. I need to de-stress. I'm going to take my breath, for instance. But guess what? If you take breaths throughout the day, or if you take a walk throughout the day, or if you call your mom, for instance, throughout the day, maybe not for the mom. I'm only saying that because as much as I love my mom, we are so similar that sometimes it's not always the most de-stressful phone call. Yes, exactly. Mom, sorry. But if we do those things throughout the day as self-care practices, what it's going to do, and I know nobody necessarily can see me when I say this, but it's going to bring down that stress level a little bit, regardless of where we are in the stress ladder. Okay. So let's imagine you're in your baseline right now. You are not stressed, but it can't hurt. Just take a breath. You know what you did? You just brought down a little bit. Now say you get a phone call that's very stressful. Now you go up a notch, right? Well, if you didn't take that breath, you would be up here and up here and up here and up here. So self-care can be the same thing that we do already, but not when we need it, but when we want to do it, right? So there's no reason we can't do the little things like this throughout the day. People think of self-care practices as like, I need to have an hour-long massage, I need to go on vacation, I need to take a bubble bath. Those are all great and amazing if you can do it. But why wait until the weekend? Why wait until vacation? Why wait until you have the time to do it when we could take moments throughout the day to help us feel better and de-stress us? So I actually say we can all create moments throughout our day. And I get it. I'm a mom. There are limited hours in the day for us all, but especially also just speaking personally, I'm a mom. I have my practice. I have all these things going on. In between my clients, I don't need to do it, but I do it. I take a breath. I walk around the apartment. I might go get some fresh air. I might grab my coffee. I might have some water. When I'm washing my hands, great example. This came up a lot with the pandemic. I tell people, we are washing our hands a lot. Every time you wash your hands, take a breath and be mindful. Feel the soap on your hands. Feel the warm water in your hands. You are now taking a moment to yourself to actually participate in self-care, and it is de-stressing you at the same time.
I love that. So what are your favorite little things of self-care that people can just insert into their daily lives really seamlessly?
Yeah, so when you're washing your hands, when you're in the shower, do some deep breathing. Maybe get a different body wash or something that has a nice scent that, will also just make that moment a little bit more special for you. Sure. I often talk about mindful cups of coffee. Also, kind of being a mom, but I think anyone that appreciates coffee can appreciate what I'm about to say. Sitting and just enjoying your coffee and the peace and quiet, maybe before anybody else is awake. Breathe it in. Enjoy that cup of coffee. Participating in anything mindful, right? Take a walk, but put your phone away. Any of these little things we can do, and it just takes a moment. We don't even need 5 minutes, right? We can just take a breath. So, but the more that we create these moments, we're actually going to appreciate the little moments and little things a little bit more. We're going to be more grateful. It's going to decrease our, improve our mood. It's going to decrease our stress. It's going to just do so much for us. And that, I think, is the myth that people believe, that we have to completely overhaul our lives to improve our mental health and improve our emotional wellness. But it is not true. And if we waited to overhaul our whole life, good luck. When is that going to happen, right? Who has time for that?
Absolutely.
So there's little things that we can do every day that's going to help us feel better. And I think we can all start now just by doing something like that.
That's so beautiful. That's so helpful and definitely thought-provoking. I will literally be thinking about that in the shower.
Yeah, right? Next time you're in the shower washing your hands, just be mindful. Use as many senses as you can. Take a breath and just be present right here, right now.
I love that. Can you think of any other misconceptions or things that people just don't know but probably need to know about, whether it's self-care, stress management, eating disorders, anything like that like we haven't touched on?
So I think just kind of getting back to that all or nothing idea, that
Mhm.
all of this is really that I want people to shift their thinking away from the all or nothing, right? Like if I can't do the hour massage, I'm not going to do self-care, right? No. Like, for instance, I'll give you a great example. I even did this morning. If I can't go out for a 30-minute run or an hour run, no big deal. I go out for a 10-minute run, right? Something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So literally I went out for a 10-minute run today. Oftentimes that happens. Like it is what it is, but I'm getting outside. It's multi-purposeful. So I think just getting away from that all or nothing thinking is related to everything we're talking about, right? So don't wait for the weekend. Don't wait for Monday to make a change or to quote, start the diet, although I don't believe in diets, but don't wait. Like just start now. There's no reason to wait. There's no reason to do the all or nothing. It's, it's living in the now, really.
Perfect. Okay, I have one more question for you.
Go for it.
I know that there's a problem, not just in the country, but in the world, but that there's just some people that don't believe in therapy.
Yeah.
And I want to know what you would say to those people.
So first, I'm going to try to be funny, but I'm not.
It's okay. I think you're funny.
Like, really? People don't believe in therapy? No.
So I know some people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I get it. I hear it often, even from many of my clients when I'm like, oh, is your son in therapy? Oh, is your husband in therapy? Is your wife, whatever. And they're like, no, they don't believe in therapy. So I will say, like everything we're talking about, the world has changed.
Yeah.
Right. We're a little bit better in the sense that we're talking about this. Like, look at us. We're talking about therapy openly. You talked about, you shared something
right,
related
absolutely.
to you,
Yeah.
your mental health. So that's a huge step in the right direction. But what I would say is that I'm not going to convince you that therapy is right for you. But what I will tell you is that therapy can be super beneficial for anybody, even if it is just a space that you can vent and get things off your chest and just talk about something you're going through that's not going to impact the other person across the room as it would maybe a family member or friend. So if you are struggling with something, sharing that with maybe a loved one can sometimes be stressful for the other person also, right? When you're in a room with a therapist, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I'm not saying we don't have an opinion because we do, but it's an unbiased opinion. And we don't know anybody you're talking about or anything you're talking about other than what you tell us. It's funny because I'm looking at a white wall behind you. And what I often tell people is, you are painting that wall for me.
Mhm.
Whatever you tell me, I'm going to believe. It might be true. It might not be true. You might be lying to me. I'm not going to be the most useful for you if you're lying to me.
Right.
But that's what I'm going to believe. And what I'm also going to say is, I like to tell people, don't wait to be in crisis to find a therapist.
Yeah.
Once again, if you're questioning it can't hurt to start the process, because having a therapist that you can trust, that you feel comfortable with, can sometimes take time. And it's helpful to just run things by them or have that another voice, another person to bounce ideas off of. And why not build that relationship now when you don't, once again, self-care versus stress management, when you don't necessarily need it is a great time to seek it. But I'm saying that knowing that it is not accessible or easily accessible to everybody. Of course, it costs money. A lot of us have wait lists, and we don't all take insurance. So it's also not that accessible. And I want to mention that.
Absolutely.
And make sure people are, I don't want to make it sound like everybody can just go be in therapy tomorrow. It's not that easy, which is also why it's great if you could start the process early.
Right. It's a work in progress. Like, I feel like years before, it was very taboo to show any weakness or any issues. And now that it's becoming more normal, I think therapy is becoming more accessible, but it's still not completely accessible yet. So in due time.
And with that being said, also along with your question, I think, also for people to remember that going to therapy doesn't mean that something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to have, first of all, nothing's wrong with you if you have a mental health diagnosis or not. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you also don't need to have a mental health diagnosis to seek therapy. And if people in your life don't agree in therapy or don't believe in it, A, you don't have to tell them, right? If you don't want to. B, you do you, right?
Yes,
If
not
you're
their
finding
lives,
this
it's
helpful,
yours.
exactly. If they don't want to go to therapy, they don't have to go to therapy. If you want to, go for it. But I think, just be mindful of that and think of what could be the most useful for you. Therapy works for some people. It also doesn't work for some people. But I think it's a great tool to have in your toolbox if it's something that might be helpful for you.
I love that. Well, it's beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for hanging out with us
Of
today.
course, this was so much fun.
No, I learned so much. Like I love all of this. Like I'm really gonna internalize so much of what you said because
Excellent.
I need better stress management because I'm a very high strung person. It's like weird. Like half the time I'm like very chill and I'm like go with the flow with everyone else, but with me I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And what I'm going to say is that also probably part of that, though, works for you. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you can't do podcast interviews and all the things that you're doing if you weren't a little bit like that.
Yeah, that
know?
makes sense.
So it's working for you.
Okay,
If it's working
yeah.
for you. don't
But
do
still
it.
finding ways to manage the stress with myself and like that's still good. That's still healthy.
Can't help
making-
it any of us.
Right. Making more time to like treat myself, self-care. Give me a little
Exactly.
treat later, like, but
Yes.
this was so helpful. And I hope it was as helpful for you guys as it was for me. Like I love this. So thank you so much, Dr. Rachel. Where can like people find you on social media?
Yeah. So I'm on social media as Dr. Rachel NYC. Also, my website is drrachelnyc.com. I always love to hear from people. If people want to DM me or message me, I always just say, A, Instagram is not therapy.
Yeah.
And B, I am not your therapist or your psychologist. So if
Yeah.
you message me, I'm happy to connect you with the right people or provide resources. But I can't give you specific recommendations because I don't know you and your background, etc.
You heard it. There she goes. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and hope to see y'all next week. Bye, my lovelies. With HelloFresh, get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking fun, easy, and affordable. But with HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table both quick and painlessly. And there's always new flavors to adventure with, as there's 50 flavors to choose from every single week. So for free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/freeRebecca. One free breakfast item per box while your subscription lasts. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/freeRebecca. All of my ADHDers, you know that a daily occurrence is the where's my phone? Where's my keys? Where's my purse? I don't know where I put them. Which is why I'm so thankful for Life 360's new tile trackers. I can track anything from anywhere. Like I can literally track my car in the parking space I left it because I'm gonna forget. And my favorite thing about tile trackers is how easy they are to use. Keep track of what's important in life with Tile. Visit tile.com and use code Rebecca for 15% off on all tiles. That's tile.com/Rebecca.